Hello and welcome to the 15-minute show, part of the Arsenal Therapy podcast. As always, we'll be broadcasting twice a week, so make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and turn on your notifications. In this show, we'll be discussing all Arsenal-related news with a key focus on transfers during the window. I'm Adam Keys and I'm your host. Today, we're joined by Farhan, also known as Gunner since '96, who's the founder and main man behind the Arsenal Therapy pod. Welcome, Farhan. Good to see you.
Morning, Adam. Thanks again for having me. Crazy day of transfers and big news and stuff to talk about from yesterday. So yeah, really excited.
Absolutely. We're starting the day in pretty jubilant form. Obviously, Kai Havertz is officially a Gooner. West Ham have told Arsenal they're accepting the 105 million bid, with the clubs working on a structure, and we're getting close to Jurrien Timber. But before we dive into all of that, we've got some quick fire questions to get started. So first off, are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
So, Jasmine or Basmati?
Oh, I'm gonna have to go with basmati.
Pasta or rice?
Do you even need to ask? Rice.
Rice or naan?
Again, rice.
So that leads us on to the main story of today's show, which is obviously Declan Rice. As I've said, the 105 million pound bid, which is absolutely insane. And I never thought I'd see Arsenal making a bid like that. West Ham have indicated that they're going to accept it. So according to both David Ornstein and Fabrizio Romano, the sticking point right now is Arsenal want to pay it over 4 years. West Ham want it over 18 months, which 18 months is pretty unprecedented for a transfer to be paid in. I had a bit of a look. Jack Grealish, his deal was paid over 3 installments, so 33 million each installment, with the final one just being paid now. So where do you see this going? Do you think this will be wrapped up today, as the reports suggest?
Yeah, I think so. I think West Ham know that they've played all their cards now. They don't really have any other trick in the book. I think they were quite desperate to not sell him to Arsenal. There's a lot of how would you call it? Lots of different theories about whether Man City were actually in for him or not. Um, I mean, yeah, very far fetched in my opinion. I find it unbelievable that Pep Guardiola and Mikel Arteta are going to be discussing a fake bid so that Arsenal's offer can be accepted earlier. In any case, 105 mil was not something that I was expecting Arsenal to put in a bid for. I thought that they would go in for a 90 plus 10, or maybe even a 95 plus 10. But 100 mil is really making a statement. It's really showing not only Arsenal fans, but also rival fans and other potential players that, look, we're serious now. We're here to play. And anyone who is available on the market, Arsenal have the ability to sign them up as well. So, yeah, it's a statement signing. In terms of the actual structure of the deal, again, I think because the ball's pretty much in our court, I don't think they have much wiggle room to negotiate the terms. We heard yesterday that representatives from Declan Rice's camp used the word frustrated when they described this current kind of negotiation and the longevity of the dealings and the happenings. So yeah, so I think it's in the best interest of both parties if we found the most realistic and the quickest solution to get past this, so that we can sign Declan Rice up, officially make the announcement, and get going with the pre-season, which isn't that far away. Actually,
No, we're hurtling towards that. So yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with everything you said there. And I've talked about it in the pod a lot. Perception's a massive thing within football. We always hear games are won and lost in the tunnel. I think the same applies to the window to an extent. It is that if you keep missing out on transfers, people start to think you're not a serious contender when it comes to a player. We've seen opposition fans love to rub it in us every year when it comes to us being linked to a player, just thinking that we're going to miss out. So this time round, Edu and Arteta have done an incredible job, and the fee is astronomical, but I am a big believer in a transfer fee is dependent on what it's worth to your team. So Man City don't need a Declan Rice right now. They've got Rodri Phillips, they've got Dusan Kovacic, they've got a wealth of talent in midfield. Arsenal need a Declan Rice. But similarly, in the way Man City are probably going to need a right midfielder this season, Arsenal have Saka and a very well established Saka. So we're both in very different positions. And for me, Rice is a player that could be a general for Arsenal in midfield for the next 8 years. Which brings me on to some of the things I want to discuss today, which is Declan Rice by numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done a bit of digging and done some comparisons between him and Thomas Partey. But the first thing that I think is really important to look at with Declan Rice is availability. So in 6 years, Declan Rice hasn't missed a single game through injury. He has missed one game through illness. Every other game he's been available for. So during that time, he's played 245 games for West Ham, and that's from making his debut. If you think he was an 18-year-old when he made his debut, so that are very, very impressive numbers. And to be available from he played 26 games in his first season as a pro at West Ham, and to do that from year one, this is Saka type availability. And again, I had a look at that. So Ben White hasn't missed a game through injury in his career. He had a couple of knocks at Arsenal, but he didn't actually. I think at the end of last season, they rested him because of a precautionary knock. Gabriel's had 2 injuries in his entire career and missed 5 games from them. He's also missed 6 games through illness. Kai Havertz has only missed 12 games through injury, and he's played nearly 300. And Jurrien Timber in his 3 years at Ajax has missed just 7 games. So there's a very clear indication of what Mikel Arteta is looking for here. We've seen this with Martin Odegaard's always available. Saka's always available. The 2 I've mentioned, Ramsdale's always available. Again, I think he's had 1 injury in his career. So this, I regularly say you can't influence a game from the treatment table. And we had years of watching Diaby, Eduardo, those kind of players who, yes, had horrible injuries, and that led to a lot of their problems. But we lived in the hope every year that they would come back. Same with Aaron Ramsey. So getting these players that are kind of ever present, that's going to be huge for Arsenal next season. And so with that in mind, the big comparison here is Thomas Partey, who, as we know, on his day is a Rolls Royce of a midfielder. Really light feet, can ghost past players, manipulate space, ping the ball all over with pace, zip, and just like those short passes, whatever he wants, he can do it. And actually, Partey and Rice's numbers, they make for some interesting reading, because in some areas, Rice is quite far ahead of Partey, but in other areas, Thomas completely outperforms him. So I guess, what is your gut reaction to where Rice will play? Where do you think he's a Xhaka replacement or a Thomas Partey replacement?
Well, Adam, as you were speaking there, I was actually asking myself that very same question, and I'm trying to visualize where he would play. And my mind was ticking to places where Arteta would potentially drastically change the whole system, where maybe we only play with a 6 and then 2 advanced midfielders. To what do they call it? Number 10s, isn't it? I mean, who knows? Who knows? This is a really difficult question to ask, because he is perfectly capable to play in either of those positions. And the only thing that worries me, though, when you were talking about the injury record or the lack of, is the level of intensity that he's been playing at West Ham. I know the previous season to the last one was a little bit different, because they were doing quite well, weren't they? They were actually performing at peak levels for large parts of the season. But I just wonder that if he comes into an Arsenal side who are going to be playing with such high intensity and such what's the other word I'm looking for? The I can't quite figure it out. But playing at such a high level, you would think that maybe something might go wrong there. I mean, it depends on whether he's able to prepare himself for that. anyways, you were talking about the positioning. I think what suits him best is probably to play the Partey role, where he doesn't need to commit himself so advanced up the pitch, and he's probably better off to shore up the defense by sitting in front of them and to just move the ball forward. We know that as a presence physically, he fits that role because not everyone can play a six as well as Partey does because of the presence that he has in midfield, right? Torreira was I think Torreira was the last person to play that role, wasn't he? But he was a little bit more advanced in the sense that
Yeah, his first season he played very much as a kind of early Conte type, the way Conte played at Leicester. I know he evolved at Chelsea a lot and played much more box to box and got further forward. And then Emery decided, let's play him basically as a 10
yeah.
to win the ball high up the park. And that was part of where I think Torreira's downfall came. And he was also a very limited passer as well. I think that's something we have to be honest about with
Yeah.
Torreira.
So the thing that with Torreira that I wanted to mention is that he played. I mean, he did a sterling job in his first season, but he didn't have the presence. So Rice has that presence. He has the ability to calm things down in that section of the pitch. There is a sense of stability when he's there. But if we're talking about someone who needs to be committing forwards, who needs to be helping out or assisting the winger on the left hand side. In this case, it's Martinelli. I would probably put my trust in someone else.
Yeah, well, so as I said, I did a bit of deep diving into the numbers, and some really impressive big numbers popped up straight away. So this season, Declan Rice won possession more than any other player in the Premier League, 334 times. He had the most interceptions in the league with 63, the most carries with 702, the most distance covered with 412 kilometers, the fourth most successful long passes, 151, and then I guess this isn't the most impressive, but ninth in tackles won. So that was 79 tackles. So very impressive numbers all round. I think the one that really doesn't surprise me is the number of carries, possession won, and interceptions. They are a huge part of Declan Rice's game. And there's something that I see Arsenal being able to really progress in the final third. Because Martin Odegaard's a player that wins the ball very effectively in the final third. And Kai Havertz has the ability to win it a lot. He wins a surprising number of balls in the final third. And I think the security both Odegaard and Havertz give you, if you've got a player like Rice that's winning the ball a lot, that's huge. And that's something that Rodri does for City a lot. But interestingly, I did some comparisons to Thomas Partey. So Rice last season, as you said, when we talk about 6 and an 8, he scored 4 goals, which given where he was playing, is a fairly respectable number. I think Partey scored 3. And so, again, not a huge number of difference there. So, per game, Declan Rice had 70 touches per game. Thomas Partey had 95. So, instantly, that shows you where the two of them are getting the ball. It's very much Partey's involved in everything. And again, Rice is involved in everything for West Ham. My gut instinct around this was West Ham are going to have played a lot less passes, have had a lot less of the ball. However, again, I did some looking into that. So Arsenal at around 60% possession in every game, West Ham at just over 50. So with that, Arsenal played 459 passes a game. West Ham actually played 419. These are successful passes as well. So when you look at those numbers, there isn't a huge amount of difference between the number of passes. So again, it shows Arsenal clearly more dominant, but West Ham still played a lot of passes. So that is an area where we're going to want to see Declan Rice showing for the ball a lot. And I guess with the way Arsenal play, the intricate nature, whereas West Ham do play with bigger spaces, he will naturally have more touches there. But when we go into the actual passing numbers, they are more similar. So yeah, where am I? So yeah, Arsenal played 263 passes per game in the opposition half, but West Ham played just 212. So that's where you can see the difference coming. Arsenal play a game much higher up the park. And as I said, with Rice and his ability to win the ball and carry, you would like to think that's going to advance us further forward. But how do you see the difference? Obviously, Rice is a much more, I would say, a more dynamic player than Thomas Partey. Thomas is a very strong player, but he doesn't have that same burst. He's got a more of a gliding type carry than Rice,
Yeah.
which is Rice for me has more of the Yaya Toure about him, where it's when he gets going, you're going to have to really shrug him off. Whereas, yes, Thomas has the strength, but he's got the grace to go with it. So, how do you see the difference there in how we'll play and set up with if you've got a sixth like that versus the light feet of Thomas?
I don't know about you, but I've always preferred an 8 who has a little bit more grace with him. So I feel like Xhaka demonstrated that really well last season. He was able to play on the ball really well in terms of great vision to get the balls in between those lines, but also position himself on the edge of the box, which was really helpful for players like Martinelli and Zinchenko. And yeah, I feel like with someone like Declan Rice, who's quite heavy footed, someone who's, yeah, it's difficult to shrug off. I'm not so convinced, only because I've been so used to seeing Arsenal last season play with Xhaka in that role, and Xhaka is a little bit more lighter and a little bit more free flowing than someone like Declan Rice. So I'm going to need a little bit more convincing, maybe during the pre-season, if Arteta can. Maybe he decides to switch it. Maybe he decides to play someone more heavy-footed as an 8, and then his number 6 going into next season is someone who's a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more, someone who plays with a little bit more freedom. But yeah, it's Thomas Partey for me also someone who's always. I've always felt like he's always been someone who's been restricted in his role as a 6, in the sense that his main priority is to make sure that he is number 1 winning back possession, and number 2 continuously keeping that ball moving forward. So yeah, I mean my brain and my imagination is going wild as we're discussing this, because the different kinds of solutions and the different kinds of variations are endless.
Yeah, well, actually, on that is a very good point. So Thomas Partey makes 3 tackles a game for Arsenal versus Declan Rice is making 2.1. So that very much feeds into what you're saying about winning possession. He also wins, Thomas, wins 7 duels on average per game for Arsenal, and Declan Rice was winning 4.4 for West Ham, which again shows that he's very much that he gets the play going. He gets it from Saliba, gets it from Gabriel, turns. He also has a better dribble success rate than Declan Rice. So he's averaging 2.5 successful dribbles per game compared to Rice with 0.9. So once Rice has the carrying numbers where he really powers through that pitch, I talk regularly about Partey manipulating space. How often do we see him take that ball in the half turn, feign one way, and just glide past his man? And again, whereas I think with Rice, again, completely different styles of play. Both work very well. Rice is more, he's going to power forward. And again, I think Rice is very good feet. And if you watch his carrying videos and comps, a lot of them, he's very good at kind of, again, working the space and working a defender in a kind of dribbling way, but it is more kind of angular than Thomas is. Very like, he can switch the ball with ease, he can pull it back, he can stop, he can just...
He's got no hip bones, basically. He's so flexible.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's funny because Thomas is quite a stiff player in other ways, but whenever he has the ball at his feet, it's like he's on a cloud sometimes, which again, this is going to be really interesting to see. In an ideal world, I would love to see the 2 of them play together. And there's also Jorginho to fit into this. There's Kai Havertz, which for me is really, really exciting. But then just a couple other interesting numbers. So Declan Rice makes just 0.6 fouls a game compared to Thomas, who's making two. He also is loses possession just not 9.9 times a game versus 17 for Thomas Partey, which perhaps suggests that Declan Rice is more of a safe player at times. And again, this is something, if you watch Man City, Rodri rarely goes for those big splitting passes. So much of Rodri's game is availability, receiving, giving, going, that metronome type player. And that's something I would love to see that from Arsenal, where the six isn't taking massive risks. And then we've got the Odegaard in front and potentially Kai Havertz. This is maybe where the talk of Havertz as an eight comes in if your six is more secure. So how do you see that working? Do you think that would work if we had a safe six like Rice with I guess, a loose eight like Havertz, who's more of a 10, potentially a striker?
Yeah, again, look, so as you were speaking, once again, I'm trying to get my brain to slow down a little bit, but you can't help. Just let your imagination go wild and just think of all the different combinations. I'd love to see that. I would. I think as and when the reports first came out about Havertz, it got me thinking, and this is something that when we're talking about phase 4 and when we're talking about the next step to the evolution of Arsenal's game on the pitch, we don't need to replicate what City have done. What we need to do is figure out a better way or figure out a completely different way that curveballs all the other Premier League clubs to do something really dramatically different, but also effective. So I can absolutely see a world where Havertz is playing as an advanced number 6. Rice plays the Partey role, but Partey role is no longer a Partey role. It's become the Rice role, where he uses all of his qualities in that system with those disciplines, i.e. the priorities of making sure that he's holding his position, to make sure that he's winning back possession and to move the ball forward. And again, Havertz doing exactly what Xhaka did, but in his very way, using his abilities, which is maybe being in possession a little bit more, using his skills as someone who's good in possession, as opposed to Xhaka, whose ideal traits were playing those really intricate, nice line breaking passes and just his overall enthusiasm and intensity. So we can imagine all we like. I guess until we see that first game in pre-season, we're never really going to capture what Arteta is seeing in his head. So, and also, not to mention the other signings that are going to be coming in. I mean, I imagine that we will get at least another extra midfielder, whether that be Lavia or whether that be somebody else. So,
we all know the name we're dreaming of, though, don't we?
We were speaking off air about him, and the ideal partnership would, of course, be Caicedo and Rice. And who knows? I think we've just had 2 weeks of the transfer window. We've made 2 signings. It's an excellent start from Arsenal, and if this is the start that we're getting, then I believe we will be getting a consistent window with a lot more really attractive signings.
Absolutely. And that's just to wrap up the show, because we've lied to you all today. We have gone over the 15-minute mark quite substantially, but obviously Kai Havertz has been announced. So now that it's done, he's wearing an Arsenal shirt. He's spoken very positively about the club. What are your thoughts now that he is officially a Gooner? And because 2 weeks ago, I think it was on the first episode of this show, we completely rubbished the reports. And actually, Alex Goldbridge of the Upstart was the first to break that story. And he was also one of the ones to get a lot of details right about the Declan Rice deal. So he deserves a lot of credit there.
Yeah, hats off to him, and hats off to anybody else, journalists who are providing us with a lot of important information, accurate information as well. I know there are a few big ones out there who have maybe tripped up on the Rice deal, i.e. Damasio. I think I think he took a bit of a peltering yesterday. Look, with someone like Kai Havertz, first and foremost, hats off to the Arsenal fan or fans who broke the news before Arsenal. We got the interview, didn't we? I think it was yesterday or the day before. And really interesting stuff to see it come out before Arsenal officially announce it. But look, it's great to see him in an Arsenal shirt, number one. And I guess if we're going with gut instinct, a good indication of whether a signing is good or bad is how you feel when you see them in an Arsenal shirt. And I certainly felt really good about it because, number one, he spoke really well in the little clip that we saw. And he had a really big smile on his face. It looked genuine. It looks like, and the same with Jorginho as well. I was very skeptical when Jorginho came through and we announced that signing. But the things he said, the attitude, and the overall body language suggests that they are invested and they genuinely want to be at Arsenal. Unlike a few other signings who he signed, like Aubameyang, I always felt iffy about. During the time when he was supposed to sign his extension, it did very much feel like we were forcing him or we were just pushing it down his throat. It didn't seem as organic as some other moments with other players.
I guess with Saka, Martinelli,
Yeah.
Ramsdale, we're seeing Odegaard being interviewed now in talks of an extension when he's still got 2+1 on his contract, and he's saying, "I want to be here. I found my home," and that's what we want to hear from players. And I get they're all professionals. Not everyone has to love the club. Some of them, I just want them to give 100% when they're on the pitch. And but yeah, I completely agree with you. And so yeah, I think to completely wrap it up. So hopefully we get the Jurrien Timber deal done over the next few days. But just last word on Rice: will it be done today? Yes or no?
Yes.
I like your optimism. So we will leave it there. So thank you to everyone that's joined us on the 15-minute show, which has turned into the 27-minute show today. And if you've enjoyed it, please hit the like and subscribe button and be sure to follow us on the Arsenal Therapy podcast. So thank you to Farhan for joining us. You can find him on Twitter at @GunnerSince96, and you can find me over there at AdamKeys_. So thanks again for joining us. Have a great day.